Hello, everyone. This is Justin Smythe from nextbigtrade.com. This is the sector review for July 4th, 2025. Starting off with the US dollar, which was discussed last week, where a reversal candle was something we were looking for to indicate a bottom to this huge move lower, which would also have a high likelihood of coinciding with a correction in the stock market. And we did get a decent reversal here, but not the best reversal. It'd be more bullish if it closed back towards the top of the week and we got kind of a close a little bit off the highs of the week. But the US dollar is still likely close to a major bottom here. There's a lot of media is now focused on this downtrend in the dollar, which has already taken place. We know the media tends to get focused on something well after the move is just about over, and then it tends to reverse. The media is often just extremely late when it brings up something in the stock market. So I think it's likely the US dollar is either going to have one more move lower and then probably a reversal maybe next week, or we're already starting to reverse and we're going to start printing higher lows as early as next week, and then we're going to start moving higher here back towards the 30-week moving average. So getting very late in this downtrend. A lot of what's benefited this year has been inverse US dollar trades. Precious metals, foreign stocks have really benefited from the dollar moving lower. So a snapback move higher in the US dollar is going to be bearish for those assets. And then, as we'll discuss next, Bitcoin has really struggled, even with the US dollar moving sharply lower over the last month. And gold has also topped around the April timeframe, which we'll look at in a second. But this divergence here is typically a warning sign that we're going to continue to roll over. I was thinking that Bitcoin was going to have one more high and then kind of fail that breakout and move lower after that. But the rest of the cryptocurrency space just continues to look extremely weak. And I think Bitcoin is, basically completing a major top here. And we're going to look for a rollover into stage 4 to join the rest of the cryptocurrency space next. Ethereum was kind of flashing some type of move here, even though it corrected during the Iran-US war tension weekend over here. But the volume on this move is just, extremely poor. And we still have tons of overhead resistance here in Ethereum. And, if it finds resistance here, it's likely to roll over, continue its downtrend, and we'll look at the rest of the space, but we're still just looking, very toppy here. There's no volume in any of these cryptocurrencies, and they continue to just trade below long-term moving averages. So Solana's continuing to roll over here, continues to find the, both long-term moving averages as resistance. Relative strength has been negative during this entire rally. Binance, a little bit stronger, but again, starting to roll over against the S&P 500. No volume, very vulnerable here. And then finally, Dogecoin, one of those more speculative ones that a lot of these cryptocurrencies had big rallies after the election time frame where the volume came in. But ever since then, the volume's been non-existent. They've been underperforming the S&P 500 and are below long-term moving averages. So, cryptocurrency does not look good here. I think Bitcoin is close to a long-term top, and we might get a brutal bear market, pretty soon for even Bitcoin. Now, the cryptocurrency stocks have been the area that's had a nice move higher this cycle. And that's where the speculation has been even this past week. Wanted to discuss some of the divergences going on here, though, because this is mentioned in the timing model, and this is where you start to see things start to fall apart late in a move, which starts to indicate a potential top forming. So, obviously a big move off the April lows. Hood is the leading stock in the block ETF. This has been a leader in the sector, but you can see that finally starting to see some selling pressure come in here this week. Uh, Still overall kind of a bullish candle, but you've got this huge volume here, which you tend to see major volume at major turning points in stocks. And we saw a huge volume at the April bottom where it was a good time to get long. Hood was in the newsletter back then as one of the best stage two breakouts. And then, now we've had a major rally, and it could be that sellers are coming in here and taking profits, which is why you've seen the price kind of move off the highs of the week. So you've got a little bit of divergence shaping up here, a little bit of topping indicator. And then if you look at other stocks in the sector, Circle was obviously a monster winner after the IPO for a couple weeks, but then you have this monster selling come in. This could be the high for the move here. And then it wasn't able to make a higher high this past week. Then you've got a stock like BMNR, which was, a smaller stock where the speculation was this week, really almost entirely this week, pushing the stock up to insane levels in just 1 week. And then if you look at another leading stock or supposed leading stock in the sector, MSTR, this one has struggled since May, diverging, not making a higher high, and no volume coming in here, unlike the rest of the sector. So if you look at MSTR from April until May, a lot of the stocks in the sector really followed the same pattern. They were moving higher, but only recently we've seen a little bit of a move again in some of these stocks, more speculation, but we're starting to see a divergence here. And again, this is the type of thing you see late in a rally where not everything is following through higher. You start getting these divergences, and these are like the subtle warning signs that start to indicate things could be topping and rolling over. So wanted to provide that example for the cryptocurrency stocks. And you also saw a lot of the speculative stocks in this sector rallying this week finally, which again, the smaller, more speculative stocks tend to rally late in stock market uptrends before everything tops out. And again, that's what we saw this week with this sector. So bottom line, evidence of a late move in cryptocurrency stocks. And with the cryptocurrencies themselves not following through higher, I think this sector is about to get into major trouble soon here. Gold, again, diverging from the US dollar. The US dollar had a major move lower during this time frame, and gold was unable to really follow through higher. Gold has already had a major rally, for a year and a half now, and gold could be looking to, finally roll over here and have a correction. The other precious metals, however, have been where the speculation has heated up again, and where the money's been flowing. Instead of gold, silver still looks pretty good here. There's really nothing that's looking bad about this chart besides gold, not being the leader of the sector anymore. So we'll see if silver can follow through here. But again, you might want to be taking profits on any move higher because, the stock market overall is just getting more dangerous right now. Platinum is showing signs of getting a little bit toppy again. Sellers kind of coming in the last 2 weeks and pushing price back down. Hasn't quite really broken down yet though. And moving back to silver stocks, again, silver is still looking pretty good here, but we'll see if it can continue higher with this sector looking mixed. And then finally, solar was another sector that broke out this week. A lot of back and forth with the news, political stuff kind of influencing this sector. Probably too late for solar to really have a major move higher here because of where the stock market is, but definitely a sector you'd want to keep an eye on after this correction is over to see if we get more of a bottom here. We might get more basing while there's a correction going on, and then perhaps we get another breakout later on. So overall, pretty little bit of a speculative week for a shortened week. Cryptocurrency stocks obviously were the focus, but they're also looking like they're late stage. And the US dollar really is a key thing to watch. If we continue to get that bottoming pattern going, that might be indicating a potential top coming here for the stock market.